So you've gone through the avoidant experience. Your heart is likely shattered. You're probably wondering to yourself, how does a person even get to be this way? How do they get to the point where they're unable to sustain a healthy relationship? How do they get to the point where they want love, but every time they get it, they sabotage it? How do they get to the point where they fear emotional intimacy? Well, the answer almost always goes back to childhood. This is a person that received consistent emotional neglect in childhood. Their emotional needs were not met. They were not given the love and the nurturing in the way that they needed. In addition to that emotional neglect, their feelings were routinely dismissed. If you're sad, go be sad in your room. Nobody wants to see your emotions here. The end result is a person that feels unlovable because of that neglect, they personalized it, and fears to communicate because they learned that if they communicate their emotions, it leads to rejection, emotional abandonment. That lack of love and nurturing generally gets personalized by the child. I must be defective. There must be something wrong with me. They carry these fears and feelings into adulthood if they haven't worked on themselves. That's why avoidants put up walls and they keep their partner on the other side of the wall. That's why they fear emotional intimacy. That's why they fear being vulnerable. They learn that if you rely on anybody for your emotional needs, such as their parents or caretakers, you're going to get rejected, disappointed, possibly even abandoned. Also, that feeling of defectiveness. If they let down their wall, the fear is their partner will figure out that they are defective, unlovable, etc. So if they keep their partner at an emotional arm's length, they get to protect themselves. This person won't figure out that they're defective. That's how they feel safe. That's why they feel safe doing things that create emotional distance. It protects them from being exposed. If this person was a dismissive avoidant, they'd received that consistent neglect. But their basic needs were often met. They might have had a stable household. They may have had food, clothing, shelter. And from the outside, it may look like, well, this is a great home, a great family. And in most cases, their parents did genuinely love them, but often they are coming from stoic households where you don't talk about emotions. You don't talk about feelings here. And if you're sad, you stuff it and you put on a happy face. So the end result is a person that grew up in a stable environment where their emotional needs were not met. And many dismissive avoidants also had parents or caretakers that were very controlling with high expectations. Controlling with expectations, smothering, it is still not nurturing. So they learned that, well, in order to get love, I have to be perfect and I have high expectations on me, which is why any kind of expectations in a relationship feels insurmountable to them because they weren't able to meet the expectations of their parents or caretakers growing up. And that's also why they fear losing their independence in a relationship because they were smothered, they were controlled. So they learned that emotional closeness equals losing your independence, losing your autonomy. Now, if you're dealing with a fearful avoidant, keep in mind they have an anxious preoccupied as well as a dismissive avoidant attachment, as disorganized attachment. They received that consistent childhood emotional neglect as well, but in addition to that, they often grew up in a household where there was volatility, chaos, perhaps even abuse and trauma. That's how they developed both attachment styles. So whether you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant, this is a person that grew up in an environment where their emotional needs were not met at all. And now, as an adult, it causes them to have these intense fears in a relationship. Trust issues, insecurities that cause them to self-sabotage healthy relationships. They never experienced it. They don't feel lovable. So when they get that love, it feels foreign to them, perhaps even concerning. Sometimes they may even feel like, well, there's no way this person really loves me like that. They might be trying to manipulate me. They might be trying to control me. Now, avoidants that are parents, most of the time they really do genuinely love their children. It's not that they don't love their children, but due to their lack of understanding on how to speak about emotions, process emotions, and show affection and love, They often don't give their kids that nurturing and love in the way that the child needs, but it's not from a lack of love. It's a lack of ability to show that love, to help the child grow emotionally, because they lack the skills themselves. Many severe avoidants, especially dismissive avoidants, experience something called alexithymia. That's the inability for them to recognize and understand their own emotions as well as the emotions in others. How can they possibly show a child the proper level of love and nurturing if they themselves don't even understand their own emotions? Often, this can go for generations. Emotional neglect, child grows up to be avoidant, and they emotionally neglect their child, and their child grows up to be avoidant. It can keep on going and going until somebody breaks the cycle, until somebody becomes self-aware, recognizes their attachment wounds, and works on themselves and heals and becomes secure, and now can model different behavior for their own child. Again, it's not that they don't love their children, but they do lack the skill set to properly show their children that love. Now, as an adult, every adult is responsible for their own actions. And when they do things like ghost, cheat, discard, yes, those are choices, and they are very hurtful choices, and they are responsible for those choices. But understand, it's not a reflection of you if you've had any of those things happen to you. It's not your fault. You didn't cause it. These are childhood attachment wounds that this person hasn't dealt with. And because of their deep insecurities, they become entirely self-focused, focused on soothing those insecurities, soothing their anxieties in the way that they know how, which is to seek external validation and avoid whenever they're triggered. It's unfortunately due to their own childhood and their insecurities. It's nothing that you caused, so don't blame yourself. If you're blaming yourself for somebody else's unhealthy behavior, if you're personalizing it, you're just pushing yourself further down the path of anxiety. Be kind to yourself. Recognize it isn't a reflection of you. Have empathy for the fact that this person clearly has wounds that they haven't dealt with yet, but also recognize that you don't have to be on the receiving end of that kind of behavior. And it still is a reflection of this person because they are an adult and they could choose differently.